What's up YouTube, it's LEGO King 71, and in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the entire 1 year long build process of my massive 50,000 piece LEGO Black Falcon castle MOC. The finished castle is over 3 feet tall and weighs nearly 60 pounds with details packed into every inch of the build. If you've been following my channel, you'll know that I've been making update videos of my progress, highlighting some of my building techniques along the way. So in this video, you'll see how I built all the mountain rocks and terrain, a functional gatehouse, a tavern, multiple secret underground mine shafts, a medieval farm complete with a windmill, and of course the massive Black Falcon's mountain castle. And let's not forget about the over 75 minifigures that bring this MOC to life. There's just so much to talk about with this build, so let's get right into it. I started sketching out a rough plan for the new castle. Let's take a look at the sketch I made so you can see what I have planned. Try not to judge me too harshly for my drawing skills though. I promise my LEGO building skills make up for my lack of artistic ability. Starting from the bottom left of my sketch, you can see that I'll be building a path up the mountain that leads to the outer wall and gatehouse of the castle. The castle gate will be powered by a water mill harnessing the energy from the river which is located inside of the wall. To get over the river, there will need to be a bridge that leads to a path winding all the way up the mountain. Along this path, I want to have some sort of tomb or burial chamber with the entrance built into the side of the rock face. A little further along, I want there to be a tavern for travelers to stay in. Underneath this tavern, there will be a secret mining operation run by the infamous Wolfpack crime organization. Then further up the path, there will be more houses and farm buildings, including a windmill. There will also be crops and livestock in this section of the MOC. The path then leads to another river crossing and another bridge crossing over to the castle. I haven't really thought too much about the exact design of the castle, so this part of the sketch is really just a placeholder. The other thing I decided before I started building is that since this is a mountain castle, I wanted there to be snow incorporated into the build. But since I mentioned before that I wanted to have crops in the village, the most logical idea I could think of was to have this MOC set in autumn. That way the crops won't be harvested yet, and I can even incorporate some awesome pops of color with autumn leaves on the trees. With this plan in mind, I could start laying out base plates with these large dark gray rock pieces which will serve as the base layer of the mountain. After that I started on the more detailed terrain building. For the main color of the soil, I decided to use dark tan plates which I will later add patches of white plates on top of to represent snow. You can see as I'm building that I'm using all kinds of different colors to support the terrain underneath. None of this is going to be visible when the MOC is finished, so I just tried to use the most obnoxiously colorful pieces rather than wasting the colors of bricks that I'll need for other parts of the MOC that will be visible. You can see in these clips that I'm making all of the elevation changes exactly 1 brick tall. This is to cut down on the number of parts I'm using, and it also helps keep the base layer of the mountain terrain easier to build on top of. In a future video, I'll be adding layers of angled plates to make the slope look more gradual and natural. Those same plates will also cover up all the different colored support bricks that are currently exposed in these clips that you're seeing now. I also wanted to show you guys the technique that I use to give the river a smooth look without the seams that tile pieces typically leave behind. To do this, I turned 1 stud wide blue bricks on their side and rested them directly on top of the studs of the base plate. You can see that this makes the flat surface exactly 1 brick tall, meaning that it's super easy to layer these dark gray bricks on top of to lock the blue bricks in place and also make a seamless transition from the water to the rocky terrain. This also makes it super easy to have interesting angles where the rock meets the edge of the river, giving it a more natural look. Once I had some terrain built, I moved over to my desk to build a prototype of the guard tower for the castle gate. I experimented with a few different techniques, and once I had something I generally liked, I started building the gate and the tower on the MOC itself. You can see that I went with a 6-sided tower design using snot bricks and 1x2 slope pieces where the corners meet. In my last castle, a lot of the walls were very smooth, so in this castle I wanted to mix up the textures on the walls to look more weathered and realistic. I did this with a combination of masonry bricks and snot bricks covered by tiles, but my favorite texturing technique uses a headlight brick turned on its side with a 1x1 plate stacked on top of it. The mixture of all 3 of these techniques creates a really cool look, I think. Once I finished the tower, I built a stone bridge over the river. I used tiles connected to snot bricks on the side of the bridge to give it a nice stone arch look, and I think the profile looks really awesome, especially from the side. I used a similar technique to create a stone arch around the door of the gatehouse. Now let's move on to the water mill. Here you can see that I built the water wheel using 4 of these quarter circle fence pieces, which I think looks great. But I didn't just want it to look cool. One thing I wanted to challenge myself with was to make the gate fully functional and have it actually be powered by the water mill. To do this, however, I needed to modify the gate and cut it down to size with some scissors. Now, if you're a LEGO purist, hopefully you close your eyes for that part. In these next clips, you can see how I built the actual mechanism that lifts the gate. Essentially, the way this works is by having a chain wrap around the axle, which is powered by the water mill. But I still wanted the water wheel to be able to spin freely without always resulting in the gate lifting up. So to do this, I built a mechanism that will catch on this pin when it's in the forward position. Then to release the gate, I can simply slide the mechanism back and the pin will no longer catch and the gate will fall with the help of gravity. Once the gate mechanism was built, I started building more of the front wall. Here I built up the mountains and made a wooden defensive structure for archers to shoot arrows from. You'll see in a future update that this defensive position will be very useful for the Black Falcon Knights to use in their defense against the mountain orcs. Back on the inside of the gate, I started building the second level of the gatehouse. You can also see that I have a ladder leading up to this level. You'll probably notice that the second level of the gatehouse is inspired by the medieval timber frame design that you'll see me use on many of the other buildings in this MOC. To finish this building, I placed a removable black roof on top. In a later video, I'll add snow and icicles to the roof, but for now it's just black. I did, however, add a chimney with some white smoke coming out, and I think that adds a little bit more character to the building. After that, I built more of the terrain in front of the gatehouse and placed a temporary rock wall where I'll be building the mine shaft in a later video. The first thing I needed to build was more terrain sloping upwards towards the location of the Wolfpack Inn. I made sure to slope the terrain enough so that I would have room to build the underground mine shaft beneath the tavern. Once this was done, I started laying out the dark gray rock pieces to make the basic shape of the underground mine shaft. I placed a minifigure in the mine shaft so that I could use it as a reference for how tall and wide the walls should be. To build the inside of the cave, I'm using these large rock pieces to support the structure I'll be building above it. I'm then covering the large rock pieces with various dark gray sloped bricks to give the mine shaft a more organic look. The minifigure you see in this clip is one of the Crystal Knights that I designed. To add some more story elements to this build, I decided to have these Crystal Knights be awakened by the Wolfpack's mining operations. Some of you may recognize this figure as Orion from the Space Collectible minifigure series, but I think it makes a great medieval fantasy minifigure as well. You can see that I even have sparkling purple crystals lining the walls of the cave that match the color of these Crystal Knights. In this next clip, I've added some minecart rails made out of this flexible Lego tubing. Underneath the tubing, I placed brown tiles to represent wooden planks supporting the rails. Here are the minecarts I designed to go on the track. In this next clip, you can see that I built some wood support beams and a ladder leading up to where the Wolfpack Inn will be. After that, I finished adding these dark gray slope pieces to give the outside corner of the MOC a more natural mountain look. I've also added some lights to the inside of the mine using the same lighting kit from brickstuff.com that I used in my previous castle MOC. With my last build, I learned how important it is to light these enclosed areas. Without the lights, the entire underground area would be too dark to see anything, meaning that all the cool details I'm adding would be pretty pointless. Here's a look at the finished mine shaft. One of my favorite details are these purple mushrooms that I think pair really well with all the purple crystals. I found a clever way to give these mushrooms an interesting looking bent stem by using two 1x1 cone pieces stacked on top of each other connected by a white horn piece like this. Next, I started building more terrain wrapping around the mountain so that I could start building the catacomb underneath it. I wanted the entrance of the catacomb to look like it was carved directly into the face of the mountain, so to achieve this look, I built the entrance out of the same dark gray color that the rest of the mountain is built out of. I used more of the flexible Lego tubing and some other interesting building techniques to give the entrance an elegant look with multiple arches and other details. In front of the rock wall, I also placed some trees with these awesome golden colored autumn leaves. Here's a look at how I designed and built these trees. The Technic pieces allow for awesome looking bends in the branches, which I think gives them a very organic look. Here's what the finished catacomb looks like with the autumn trees planted in front of it. In the finished build, you can also see there is an undead army of skeletons escaping from the entrance to attack the kingdom. Luckily, the Black Falcon Knights are there to fend them off. Once that was done, I started working on the tavern above the mine I built earlier. For the foundation of the building, I used a few layers of light gray bricks. It's pretty typical for timber frame buildings to have stone foundations like this. Again, I used a combination of masonry bricks and headlight bricks to achieve the textured look for the stone foundation. Then I continued to build the rest of the building using brown bricks and plates for the timber framing. I used tan bricks to fill in the areas between the timber framing, similar to the gatehouse in the previous video. These next clips show how I built the bar area inside the tavern. You can see that I built a secret hatch leading down into the mine shaft behind the bar so that it's hidden from any visitor's view. Once I built the bar, I started building the second story of the inn. In this clip, you can see some of the snow-covered pine trees I built to surround the inn. Here's how I built these trees. They use a bunch of these white fern-shaped plant pieces turned upside down, which are then connected to these 1x1 hollow cylindrical brown bricks using a lightsaber blade. The lightsaber blade provides some much-needed stability to these trees. Then I built the roof, which will later be covered with patches of snow. I also added a chimney leading from the fireplace that I built inside the tavern. Here's a finished look at the inn. Some of my favorite details are the wood pile next to the chimney and the rabbit hanging out behind the inn. I also think that the Wolfpack logo on the front and back of the inn give it some extra character. Before I could start building the medieval farm, I needed to build more of the terrain on the second level of the MOC. Here you can see me using the same sideways building technique for the river that I used in my first LEGO Castle MOC update video. This technique allowed me to place these dark gray slopes along the edge of the river to create an awesome looking riverbank. Once that was done, I continued to extend the terrain towards the back of the MOC. This shot shows how I built supports underneath the terrain that I'm then covering with dark tan plates. This side of the MOC won't be visible, so I built the supports with all the vibrant colored bricks that wouldn't be usable in the MOC otherwise. In this shot, you can see that I started building the bottom of the stone windmill so that I could use it as a scale reference for the farmhouse I wanted to build next to it. Unlike the Wolfpack Inn in my last video, I built the farmhouse on a separate gray plate so that I would be able to position it at any angle I'd like more easily. You'll see later in this video that this is a technique I adopted for the log cabin as well, and also for many sections of the castle in my next video. Again, the farmhouse has a medieval timber frame design like the Gatehouse and the Wolfpack Inn. Once the farmhouse was complete, I continued building the windmill. I used a variety of snot bricks in combination with various plates and sloped pieces in order to give the windmill a rounded shape that narrows as it gets taller. This is definitely not the most stable building technique, but I think it looks great and accomplishes the look I was going for. Once the main structure of the windmill was complete, I built the wind turbines. I went for a 3-blade design, which I think looks less cluttered than if I had 4 blades. Here's how the turbine blades were built. Then I connected the turbine to the main windmill structure and created a roof for the building. Here's a look at the finished windmill. In medieval times, windmills were frequently used to mill grains like wheat, so I'll also be creating a wheat field in this video. To build the wheat stalks, I used tan lightsaber blades and Technic pin axle hybrid connectors, which I then placed inside these modified 1x2 plates with holes in them. In this shot, you can also see the pig pen that I created to the right of the farmhouse. There's even a small roof covering the food trough in the back. The fencing technique I used here just uses 2 snot bricks and 2 brown bars. This really simple technique has a great look and also allows me to angle the fences in any direction since they're only connected to the base plates on one stud. Next, I started building a short path that leads up to this raised area where the goat herder's cabin will be located. I also built even more mountain terrain. Like the farmhouse, I built this cabin on a separate base plate so that I could position it at any angle I wanted. I used this awesome snot technique that allowed me to place these brown bricks sideways, making them look like logs stacked horizontally. Once I built the cabin and placed it on the MOC, I built another small fence for the goats. Here's a look at the finished goat herder's cabin. After that, I moved on to the other side of the path that sits directly above the catacombs I built in my last castle mock update video. Here, to stick with the autumn theme, I decided to create a pumpkin patch and a water well that the farmers could use. The pumpkin patch is surrounded by a fence, but this fence uses a different technique that allows me to build it on sloped terrain. I also placed a few pine trees and a tree stump with a gnome hiding inside of it. In the middle of the pumpkin patch, there's a scarecrow protecting the farmer's crop from birds and other pests. Along the path leading up to the castle, there's a herder walking with his dog and his sheep. Back at the wheat field, you can also see a horse-drawn wagon where farmers are harvesting and stacking bundles of wheat. Here's a look at how I built the wagon. And after that, the medieval farm was complete. Here's a quick look at all the cool details. I've got to say, the windmill and the wheat field are probably my favorites, but let me know what your favorite part of the farm is by leaving a comment below. Let's start with the abandoned mine shaft located in the mountain under the castle. In this first time lapse, you can see that I used a combination of dark gray slopes and inverted slopes to create the walls and ceiling of the mine shaft. You can also see that I made wooden support beams for the mine using brown 1x1 bricks. In the finished build, orcs are utilizing the abandoned mine shaft to sneak up to the Black Falcon's outer gate undetected. After the mine was built, I moved on to building the platform that the castle will sit on. I used dark gray 8x10 and 8x8 bricks for the outer edges of the platform to match the Rocky Mountain terrain they'll be adjacent to. The inner part of the platform is not going to be visible, so I used the biggest bricks and plates I could find to fill in this area regardless of their color. On the riverbank, I covered the support bricks with dark tan plates to match the terrain on the other side of the river. Next, I built a double-arch stone bridge with light gray bricks and placed it across the river that I built in my last video. After the bridge was in place, I started working on the main castle gate. The gate is connected to a wooden crank that allows it to be raised and lowered by soldiers in the castle. Here's a look at how that mechanism works. To the left and right of the gate, I built two towers with cross-shaped arrow slits in the walls. I also used a series of arches to create an ornate Gothic style that I'm hoping to incorporate into the entire castle. Details like these create shadows that give the castle more contrast and depth. Without these details, the castle would look pretty boring and flat with all the monotone gray bricks. Now let's move on to the outer wall. Here you can see me place the two walls that I built separately from the mock on top of the mountain terrain. You can see that one of these walls connects to the outer gate wall at an angle. This allows additional soldiers from the castle to reinforce the outer gate at a moment's notice. You can see that I was able to use a few different angled plates to get this pathway to line up pretty seamlessly. Again, I tried to incorporate a bunch of decorative arches and other details to add more depth to these castle walls. To the left of the walls, I started building a 6-sided tower. Each side of the tower uses snot bricks and cheese slopes along the corners, allowing for these great-looking angled walls with no gaps between them. There are cross-shaped arrow slits allowing for more defensive positions in the tower. There are also archers positioned along the tops of the outer walls to defend the castle. Once this was built, I started building the second level of the castle. But before I could do that, I needed to build the supports for the second level. I also built some fake hallways so that people trying to look inside the mock see these hallways rather than multicolored support structures. Once these hallways and supports were built, I started creating the platform which I'll later be placing the cathedral on top of. I decided to build the cathedral separate from the rest of the castle, similar to the farmhouse in my previous video. Doing this will allow me to place the cathedral at an angle, which I think gives the castle a much more interesting look. At this point, since the mock was getting pretty large and difficult to build on, I designed and built the cathedral on my desk. You can see I've incorporated a variety of techniques and details to give the cathedral a Gothic look like the rest of the castle. Here's a look at the finished cathedral by itself. Later in this video, I'll place it on top of the second level platform I built earlier. Next, on the side of the mountain, I built up a flat dark gray wall. On top of this dark gray terrain, I started building the outer wall on the left side of the castle. You can see that I incorporated more arches at the top of this wall and added another cross-shaped arrow slit. On the right side of the castle, I started building a waterfall using white bricks that look like rushing water. I also built a rock cliff along the waterfall using dark gray slopes and inverted slopes. At this point, I was able to place the cathedral on top of the second level platform I built earlier. Finally, at the front of the castle, I created a trebuchet to go on top of the six-sided tower. Here's a look at how I built the trebuchet. And here's what the MOC looks like so far with all these castle additions. First, let's start with the tower to the left of the cathedral. For this tower, I used a sturdy square-shaped design. In addition to the cross-shaped windows that I used throughout the castle, I built even more details into this tower to complement the Gothic look of the cathedral next to it. Between the arches, the 1x1 round bricks, and the gray vine pieces I used, I think it really accomplished this look. Next, let's take a look at the rock cliff that I built to the right of the cathedral. You can see that I used a mixture of slopes, inverted slopes, and low-angle slopes connected to snot bricks to create a natural look for the rock formation. I also decided to add a tree with yellow leaves. I think by mixing in these yellow leaves, it subconsciously ignites memories of the yellow part of the Black Falcon's fortress from 2002. Of course, it's only right that the Black Falcon Knights have a pet falcon of their own, so I had to make a nest for the falcon using a tan minifigure neck accessory. The falcon piece comes from the Falconer Series 24 collectible minifigure. On top of this rock formation, I built another tower. This tower has some tricky angles for its walls, so I used 1x2 cheese slopes to fill in the angled gaps and make the corners connect as flush as possible. Like the other towers of the castle, I added more arrow slits with the same cross-shaped design. Moving to the back side of the MOC, I decided to destroy the sections of the cathedral that weren't visible so I could reuse all the pieces on other parts of the castle. Another advantage of doing this was that it cut down on the overall weight of the MOC. That should make transporting the castle a lot easier when I eventually get around to displaying it at a convention later this year. Once this was done, I was ready to start building the sections of the castle above the cathedral. I decided to build more rockwork here to make the castle look like it was built directly into the face of the mountain. This section was built separately from the castle and then connected at an angle on top of the cathedral. The epic-looking 2x2 pillars and 3 small cross-shaped windows built on top of the rocks are my favorite details for this section. Separately, I built another section of wall with more mountain rocks to connect at an angle left of the previous section I built. Even further to the left of that wall, I built a doorway underneath a small roof leading inside another tower. Next, on top of the previous level, I built more walls, one with a cross-shaped arrow slit and the other with a window. Keep in mind that all these walls I'm building are connected at angles that aren't square, so it makes the engineering of these sections of the castle a lot more complex. Here you can see I built 4 more windows for the middle section. I think setting the windows inside these archways creates some great looking shadows and depth on the otherwise monotone gray walls of the castle. To the right of that, I built up the tower with more cross-shaped defensive positions for archers. Then I continued building the castle even taller, starting first with the left tower, and then extending the right tower vertically. In the middle, I continued the castle upwards, but this time in the shape of a bay window. I accomplished this using a combination of clips and bars on the inside to hold the walls in place. Now that the castle was tall enough, I added plates to the tops of all these walls. This part was pretty tricky due to all the weird angles that I built the walls at. Back at the cathedral, I finished the steeple with another level of cross-shaped windows and a very steep angled black roof. I added these awesome looking gargoyle pieces to the corners of the steeple. I also added this gargoyle piece to other parts of the cathedral because I think it just looks so cool and matches the Gothic style perfectly. Here's a look at the castle with all these new additions. I think all the different angles, layering, and changes in depth give the castle a lot of character. Although I didn't specifically think about this while I was building, I think my Black Falcon Mountain Castle shares some resemblance to how Minas Tirith from The Lord of the Rings was built into the side of a mountain. Let's start with all the detailing of the rockwork. By the outer wall, there was still a lot of work to do on this mountain section. Although the rockwork is supposed to look natural and random, it most certainly is not random how I built the rock wall. It takes a lot of trial and error to make the rockwork look natural and to make sure that all the adjacent slopes have different angles from each other so it doesn't end up looking too blocky. Moving on to all the dark tan terrain, you might remember in my very first mock update that I made all the changes in slope exactly 1 brick. This was to make it easier to build on, but now I need to grade the terrain to make it slope more gradually up the mountain and also look less blocky. To achieve this, I decided to make all the changes in slope 1 plate at a time rather than 1 brick so that the terrain looks natural and smooth. I used a ton of different angled plates so that the terrain would have a bunch of interesting curves and angles, which I think looks very natural. Later in this video, I'll be adding patches of snow on top of all this terrain. But let's take a quick break from all the terrain building and work on building the new watchtower of the Wolfpack's Tavern. Of course, I couldn't make the Wolfpack's watchtower as imposing as the Black Falcon's castle, so I decided to make this tower look like it was slowly falling apart with some wood support beams exposed between the cracks in the stone. Here's a look at the finished tavern with this newly added watchtower. Now let's move on to the part of the build that I've been most excited about, adding snow. I mentioned in my very first castle mock update that I wanted this mock to be set in autumn, so because of this, the snow is going to be more sparse than if it was a winter mock. This also allowed me to incorporate the yellow leaves on the trees as well as the wheat field and pumpkin patch while still having patches of snow make sense. Let's start first with adding snow and icicles to all the roofs. I lucked out because my local LEGO store this year had tons of 2x2 white plates on their pick-a-brick walls around the winter holidays, so I took advantage of that to make a lot of the patches of snow. Next, I added snow and icicles all over the Black Falcon's castle. Finally, I added patches of snow on top of the tan terrain. I made sure to leave areas where people would be walking uncovered because this snow would be melted first. Back when I was grading all the terrain, I had to remove all the trees, so I took this opportunity to design some new, more interesting looking trees with twisted trunks. I liked how these new trees looked so much that I decided to build 4 different variations of them and spread them out across the mock. I think these trees give the mock and the castle great looking pops of color that remind me of the yellow accents on the classic Black Falcon's Fortress set from 2002. After the trees were built, I decided to build a stone path winding up the mountain. At first, I used a variety of dark gray 1x1 tiles with a few light gray tiles mixed in. Later, I decided to incorporate a lot of 1x2 light gray tiles, which I think improves the look of the path and also makes it look more filled in. You also probably noticed that I mixed in some plates with studs along the path. Not only does this add some great looking texture, but it also allows me to place minifigures securely on the path as well. Speaking of minifigures, let's get to the most exciting part of this video, adding all the minifigures and bringing the mock to life. First, let's start by adding the mountain orc army that's attacking the outer wall. A few Black Falcon Knights are outside the wall also, facing off against the orc army trying to hold off their attack. You can see that a few of the soldiers from each side have fallen in battle. On top of the gate, there are archers firing arrows at the orcs and an engineer manning the giant ballista. Moving inside the wall, there's a guard outside the gatehouse and a traveler crossing the stone bridge over the river. Across the bridge, there's a small market and a tax collector for the kingdom. The Black Falcon Knights are able to fund their massive castle and army by taxing the goods coming into and out of their kingdom. Further along the path, I placed more Black Falcon Knights to fight off the skeleton army that escaped from the Catacombs. To guard the entrance of the Wolfpack Inn, I placed a Wolfpack member along with his loyal pet wolf. His pet wolf is also accompanied by 2 wolf cubs of its own. On the balcony of the tavern, a maid and a Wolfpack archer are looking out over the mountain. In the tower, another member of the Wolfpack keeps watch. And of course, I can't forget to add the Crystal Knights and Wolfpack minifigures in the mine underneath the tavern. Moving on to the farm, I placed 2 villagers to harvest wheat from the field and load it into their horse-drawn wagon. Left of the wheat field, there's a butcher and his apprentice by the pig pen. At the farmhouse, a tax collector and his guards stand outside the door to collect money from the farmers. Outside the windmill, I placed another villager who is moving the bundles of wheat inside to be processed into flour. A few stray chickens are hanging around to pick up any scraps he leaves behind. Across the path, there's a young villager practicing his archery skills and another villager collecting water for the pumpkin patch. Back on the path, a sheep herder is leading his sheep and lamb. The last 2 villagers are found at their log cabin, sweeping and chopping wood while goats roam out front. On the Black Falcon's castle, I added knights and archers all over to protect the castle from invaders. Here, on top of the rockwork by the tree, I placed a ranger with a falcon. Further up the castle, the wizard and queen are looking out of their respective towers. Above them, even more soldiers are posted along the castle's many different walls and towers. Now that all the minifigures have been added, let's take a quick overview of the MOC with all these finished details. Let me know what your favorite part of the MOC is in the comments below. That's gonna be all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you can't get enough of this castle and you'd like to see the full 1-year build condensed into a 15-minute time lapse, make sure you check out the last video I uploaded. I've also already started on a brand new castle MOC that will be located in a swamp, so make sure you subscribe if you're interested in yet another castle MOC building series. If you're interested in seeing even more behind the scenes content and supporting my future videos, you can become a paid member of my channel by clicking the link in the description of this video. By becoming a member, you'll gain access to features like more frequent behind the scenes photos and status updates on projects that I'm working on, like this newest castle MOC, members-only polls to help me decide the priorities of my projects and future videos, in-video shoutouts at the end of my future videos, and even early access to my latest videos. Members will also get access to these awesome-looking loyalty badges and emojis that I've designed just for members of this channel. I mean, come on, who wouldn't want access to this super cute emoji of my dog Bandit who has starred in a few of my recent videos? If you're not interested in becoming a member, you can always support me by subscribing, dropping a like, or leaving a comment. As always, thanks so much for watching, and stay tuned for new videos coming soon. See ya!